decided to make a single stop and avoid scrolling or multitasking. If you leave at this time, you will miss out on an unforgettable experience. The information you are currently hearing is not arbitrary, and the fact that you are still present indicates that you are more intelligent than you realize. This message is not intended for casual listening in the background. It requires your undivided attention because an aspect of you emerged during the preparation process, necessitating that all activity halt. You recently performed an action. It wasn't calculated or planned. You weren't attempting to impress or prove anything. It was a direct reflection of your true nature, and you had no idea you'd elicited a response that went beyond your physical senses. Something changed and something reacted. Your demeanor was observed, not in a poetic or symbolic way, in a way that made the heavens pause, in a way that drew concentrated attention, because the behavior you displayed was not expected to come from someone who had gone through the same difficulties as you, not from a person with your background, not from someone who carries so much weight, not from someone who had every right to react differently. However, you did not do so. This is the result of that decision and internal posture. This is why you're hearing these words. This is why leaving early would result in the loss of the clarity you've been looking for without the ability to recognize it. Please stay, as the event that caused that pause in heaven has the potential to reframe every struggle you previously thought to be meaningless. All of the silent battles you won with no witnesses. There was no significance in each moment that you assumed. There is a specific reason why attention was drawn to you, and it is related to a process that has already begun, despite your inability to fully comprehend it at this time. Some of you have been through it. Something has changed. It's as if an invisible line has been crossed, and there is no way to return to your former self. Before anything else can be understood, one thing must be grasped. Furthermore, I will refrain from offering an explanation at this time. The majority of people miss this moment, and if they turn away now, they will miss it again. The current events were not intended for all individuals, and they are not occurring by chance. You are currently hearing this because you were already distinguished, and the fact that you are still listening shows that you perceived it before understanding it. Countless lives are observed in the unseen realms at all times. Patterns are observed. Responses are expected. Human behavior is generally predictable. Bitterness is caused by pain. Revenge stems from betrayal. Injustice produces anger. These reactions have been replicated over thousands of years. They are no longer regularly recognized. Occasionally, a soul responds in a way that disrupts the pattern. You performed that action. It happened not long ago, during one of your most difficult times. A situation that seemed to be designed to exhaust you. A burden that made the prospect of living another day unthinkable. Anyone who observed your life would have understood if you had collapsed, withdrew, or reflected back the darkness that was aimed at you. However, you did not do so. Please comprehend this. This isn't a discussion about endurance. A significant number of people suffer because of their reliance on habit, fear, or a lack of viable alternatives. That does not mean that heaven has ceased to exist. Your actions went beyond basic survival. You found yourself in a situation where bitterness was perfectly appropriate, in which anger was justified, in cases where resentment is supported by evidence. The injury was real. The offense was not intended. The wound had a name and a cause. Despite the fact that every pore of your being had the ability to retaliate or, at the very least, halt operations, a more powerful force took control. A calmer decision. an object that could support weight but made no noise. You chose grace in a situation where destruction would have been more appropriate. You may recall the occasion. A sentence you did not say. A truth that you could have shared but chose not to. A door you could have closed indefinitely with complete approval, but you chose to stay. You maintained your stance when no one would have criticized you for giving up control. At that very moment, attention is diverted. Because the information you shared was not a flaw, but rather a composition. It showed that your reactions are not solely influenced by your circumstances. The behavior of others does not determine your character. Under duress, your identity remains unaltered. The vast majority of individuals respond. They are reflections of their surroundings. The more you care for them, the softer they become. When neglected, they harden. The weather in their lives influences their identity. You did, however, present an alternative point of view. You showed that your character is deeply rooted, that no amount of pain, betrayal, or unfair circumstances can force you to become someone you do not want to be. This was the catalyst that ended the entire situation. The reason for its importance. That aspect has not yet been disclosed. Take a brief pause before proceeding. If this message struck a chord with you, take a deep breath and allow yourself to be completely present in the moment. First and foremost, I would appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video so that this message reaches those who are truly in need of guidance today. Second, you are invited to subscribe to a stream of messages tailored to your preferences, rather than a single channel. Your connection is critical in ensuring that these words reach the right hearts at the right time, as we approach 10,000 subscribers. Third, please take a moment to make a personal statement in the form of 999 or 777-inch comments. Include your city and where you're listening. Allow this to act as a subtle but significant indicator between you and the Lord. Lord, I am the person you sought. I am willing to accept the transformation you are leading me through. And, if this message has blessed you and you feel led and able, you may send a super thanks to express your heartfelt gratitude, thereby assisting in the spread of these words to others seeking hope, direction, and truth. I agree. I'd like to transport you to a time when this was observed, one that was not measured by calendars or clocks, but rather by the constant surveillance that surrounds the chosen. Your guardian angel had been watching the situation unfold, taking careful notes on your outward actions and the battles that no one else could hear. This is common for people who are under protection. However, when you chose grace over justified anger, an unusual event happened. Your file has been flagged for further review. That action is extremely rare. The Guardian has control over the majority of issues. Escalation occurs only when an event requires the attention of those in positions of authority. Your case was routed directly to Archangel Oversight. Michael was involved in matters that affected entire regions beyond human vision, conflicts in unseen realms, and movements that had long-term consequences when they reached him. However, when your file appeared, he ceased. Your record included a single line that required attention. While being actively attacked, this soul demonstrated forgiveness on the level of an enemy. Forgiveness at the enemy's level. Pain responses are classified using the unseen language. The majority of people exhibit common behaviors like withdrawal, bitterness, retaliation, and despair. These are expected. They follow traditional patterns and require no interruption. However, there is another category that is extremely uncommon and is rarely activated. It is the response that rings true. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. This is the result of responding to hatred with love while the wound is still fresh. When a blessing is chosen in the midst of harm. The Bible has consistently hinted at it, as evidenced by Joseph's statement to those who betrayed him. You intended to do me harm, but God intended it for my benefit. That is the frequency that you touched. Your response surpassed a certain threshold. Michael reviewed your most recent trajectory. Every pressure point, every unseen struggle, and every moment in which you maintained your position without acknowledgement. He was compelled to request an extraordinary experience, a direct audience. Comprehend the significance of that. Michael directs the hosts. His interests encompass vast domains. The fact that he paused over a single human life indicates that that life revealed a depth that most individuals never achieve. The subsequent conversation significantly altered the manner in which your path will be managed from this point forward. Presently, you are situated on the brink of the previous decision. Michael presented your case to the divine council not as a failure to correct or a crisis to intervene in, but as living evidence that something rare was unfolding on the earth. He disclosed the precise moment at which you selected grace. He revealed the record of your internal conflict, demonstrating how your human instincts urged you in one direction while a deeper part of you opted for another. Afterward, he disclosed your background. That particular moment was not an anomaly. It was a thread, a pattern of selecting the harder right over the easier wrong, of remaining steadfast when compromise would have gone unnoticed, and of extending kindness where none was owed and none was guaranteed to return. Recognition was precipitated by that pattern. You had been walking as a chosen individual for a long time before you were aware of it. Not because of a single heroic act, but because of quiet faithfulness that was repeated without reward, without applause, and without certainty, it was significant. You chose what was right simply because it was right, again and again. Common paths are distinguished from destined ones by the simplicity of the undertaking and the significant cost it incurred. And then God spoke, not in sound, but in unmistakable knowledge. The statement was not a metaphor or opinion. It was a declaration. This one is a reminder of why I created humanity. Allow that to reach you. The one who initiated the motion of matter and time, who formed galaxies, observed your integrity, grace, and resilience in the face of adversity, and realized that angels are unable to embody such qualities. Angels abide in perpetual awareness of divine reality. Their obedience is influenced by their visual perception. Their loyalty is maintained by their proximity. However, humans reside behind a veil. You lack sight. You are unable to hear clearly. You do not experience confirmation prior to making a decision. Nevertheless, you made an informed decision. You selected faith without evidence, integrity without compensation, and love without assurance that it would be significant. You advanced without sight, maintained equilibrium without sound, and expressed affection without feedback. Heaven is astounded by this. This is the reason why Michael continued to contemplate your life. That is the reason that God's heart was moved. You disclosed the unique gift that is inherent in human souls, the ability to select light in darkness, faith in uncertainty, and love in suffering. And now you must comprehend why Michael was surprised by your actions. When Michael initially reviewed your record months ago, there was no indication of urgency. Your gifts were evident. I have taken note of your call. Your potential was undeniable. His projection indicated that your development would proceed along a well-established trajectory. More time, more refinement, more visible victories, and more confirmation that would make belief easier. This was something that he did not foresee. He did not anticipate that you would exhibit advanced spiritual authority during one of your most challenging periods. In that moment, your decision to choose grace over justified anger was not merely virtuous. It was a deliberate disruption, a direct hit. Every attack on a chosen individual serves a purpose: to cause you to descend into a state of reaction, to incline your internal posture toward bitterness, and to attract you to a position where opposition can gain an advantage. Shifts in alignment and protection occur when hatred is reciprocated with hatred and injury is responded to with injury. That was the objective against you. However, you declined to participate in the exchange. So, you did not absorb the attack. Rather, you reversed it by responding to darkness with love. You transformed the force that was intended to weaken you into an entity that was incapable of maintaining an attachment. The object that was directed at you was unsuccessful in its mission. Energy does not vanish in the unseen order of things. Rather, it resurfaces. The object that was intended to cause you harm was unable to land and did not remain neutral. Michael observed this with awe-inspiring clarity. Because this was not a trained response, technique, or something you practiced, it was a natural response. Forgiveness emerged without calculation, and grace emerged without rehearsal. Where resistance was anticipated, love responded. He was taken aback by this. He was aware that the capability existed. He did not anticipate that you would access it at such an early stage, with such minimal reinforcement and under such intense pressure. The projected timeline was not met by your pace of progress. You passed a threshold ahead of schedule. In the present moment, the following is of paramount importance. You have already experienced the consequences of this change. Things that should have escalated, such as subtle changes, unexplained reversals, and a loosening where pressure once remained, did not. It did not come from your imagination. It is now imperative to comprehend the consequences of that response and the reasons why it is irreversible. Now examine the evidence. It is already present in your vicinity. Attacks have not solely failed. They have reversed their course. Reflect on the past few weeks. Individuals who intended to cause you harm, words that were directed at you, and subtle maneuvers that were implemented to impede your progress. Monitor the subsequent events. Their lives commenced to disintegrate. The situations they were responsible for deteriorated, and their momentum was halted without any explanation. This is not an ordinary case of cause and effect, nor is it the result of chance. This is the activation of protection in real time. The covering becomes more substantial when a soul receives divine attention. The object that was intended to undermine you was unable to maintain its attachment. It could be reversed. You may have noticed this and remained silent, perplexed as to why those who disagree with you continue to unravel. You're aware now. Second, peace was present in situations where panic should have reigned supreme and pressure should have overwhelmed you, but it did not. The storm continued to rumble, but a part of you remained motionless. Not because the problem was solved, but because of the mental peace that was instilled in you. My shepherd is the Lord. I won't be in want. That is not a poem. It is related to posture. It has been supporting you. This tranquility has been granted. It is incompatible with your current circumstances because it was not created by them. The third sign is that your perception is becoming sharper. The confusion is subsiding. Decisions that were previously perplexing are now becoming more clear. A direction is forming in the area where the fog once was. You are acquiring knowledge before you are able to articulate how you acquired it. A sudden understanding, quiet certainty, and insight that is later validated. This is an increase in guidance that is precise rather than loud or dramatic. The fourth indicator is that people and circumstances have left without a fight. Relationships that sapped one's energy broke down. Obstacles have been cleared. Doors that you didn't expect to be closed. You did not have a debate. You avoided pursuing. The situation has merely changed. However, this does not constitute a loss. This is a question of alignment. Prior to progression, heaven goes through a reorganization process. What is no longer appropriate for the destination cannot remain in its present location. Avoid retrieving items that have already been removed. The area is currently being cleared. The fifth sign has become tangible. A subdued anticipation that defies explanation. A feeling of closeness, similar to the sensation of something approaching while standing directly on the edge. This is not a figment of the imagination. The term used here is awareness. Your spirit is currently recording information that your mind does not yet fully comprehend. There is an impending event. It's directly related to the recent recognition of your abilities. It is now time to inform you about the developments that have begun for your future. When God addressed your soul, He stated that you were a reminder of the reason for humanity's existence. There was a change in the unknown. That acknowledgement elicited an unusual response in heaven. Acceleration. Those who are chosen move at a moderate pace along traditional routes. Years of preparation are necessary. Growth occurs in stages. Purpose is revealed gradually. Acceleration, however, alters the order. It means that the heavens have witnessed enough evidence. Your character accelerated the procedure. You've already shown what others take time to develop. As a result, items that were previously scheduled for a later date are being moved up. What was intended to be an additional season is now being released. Previously marked doors are now opening early. This has already been noted by you. Movement in areas with a delay. Despite opposition, a breakthrough was achieved. Development that happened much sooner than expected. This is a growing trend. Acceleration also affects opposition. Resistance is not simply mitigated, it is eliminated. Certain conflicts will not reoccur. Certain battles will never be fought again. Forces that were previously targeted against you have been reassigned. Growth has been freed from the friction that normally governs it. Your entry into a period of unusual favor is approaching. Performance isn't the issue. As a result of the alignment. However, this needs to be heard clearly. This promotion is not just about you. Heaven accelerates the progression of a life when it is intended to influence others. The grace you showed in the face of adversity was never meant to be limited to you. It was intended for transportation. You are about to come across people who are standing in the same spot as you were previously. A group of people who are faced with a similar choice. Individuals are considering whether to harden or rise. Furthermore, your life will respond to their inquiry without the need for speeches or explanations. Your presence will be acknowledged. Your calm demeanor will serve as assurance. Your journey will serve as an example of what is feasible. You are referred to as the world's source of light. A city that is located on a hill cannot be hidden. Not because you try to be radiant, but because light manifests itself. What first awoke you is now awakening others. Those who are ready to perceive will recognize your narrative. Your transformation will serve as authorization for someone else's. This is why heaven moved so strongly, not because you needed more resources. However, you will influence a large number of people. The quality that drew God's attention has become ingrained within you. The grace that astounded heaven has become a part of your nature. And it will multiply in every life that has the opportunity to encounter it. I will notify you of the final record of your case that Michael had written. When a soul reaches Archangel Review, it is given a name that is more of a reflection of its true nature than a title of honor. The soul carries that name forward. It is how they are recognized by the heavenly realm. Yours was recorded as a warrior of light with exceptional abilities. Not speculative. It isn't assumed. Exhibited. This is important. Many people have the potential to be referred to as warriors. Only a few of them have been demonstrated in real-world situations. Your title is not determined by your potential for future advancement. It is based on your past experiences. You made your decision when the cost was tangible. A warrior does not sit on the sidelines. A warrior approaches the arena. You didn't simply agree with the truth. You were the person who transported that item. You didn't simply admire the light. You advanced it into areas that were resistant to it. The term light is extremely important. Some people are driven by their anger. It works properly. Nonetheless, it is extinct. Some people fight because they feel obligated to. It continues. However, it lacks force. However, the highest ground is to fight from the light, to move from love, grace, and goodness. You encountered darkness but chose not to reflect it. You reacted to the pressure by improving your clarity. In response to harm, you increased the intensity of the light. This is why your response was so meaningful. This title will remain with you from now on. It is how your life is perceived in the unseen. It alters how assistance is distributed. The method for dealing with resistance. The process of provision. Not because you are superior to others, but because you have demonstrated the ability to bear a heavier burden while maintaining your identity. Heaven grants greater privileges to those who maintain their integrity in the face of adversity. You are now recognized as someone who can withstand intense situations without becoming consumed by them. A person who can move forward without becoming the polar opposite of what they are attempting to overcome. In addition, this is not the end of the text. One last message was recorded for your specific attention. You are also prepared to receive it. Following the conclusion of your life review, when the decision was made and the course of your future was set, a rare item has been added to your record. A written communication. This is not symbolic. It is not ceremonial. A symbol of gratitude. This does not apply to everyone. This award is given to people whose lives have demonstrated something. The lives of those who have faced pain, collapse, and adversity reveal an incredible level of divine strength. All that is required is to be awake. Your anguish was not overlooked. Your break was not squandered. Your difficulties did not indicate vulnerability. They served as proof. Evidence that a significant entity was growing inside of you. The message you received did not address the issue of correction. However, there is potential for expansion. It claimed that the severity of your suffering and the manner in which you endured it exceeded heaven's expectations for humanity. You were not surviving by instinct. By design, you were selecting. Additionally, in doing so, you showed that the constraints on human life are not inherent in the creative process. However, they are influenced by decisions made under duress. Now, you selected a higher level. As a result, you are receiving guidance. I am not consoled, indicated, unprotected, located. They were not spared. Your vulnerability does not make the path ahead any easier. It is more substantial because of your physical power. You will be entrusted with situations that require the same grace that you have already shown. No way. However, as proof of trust, the subsequent events will require your attention once more. Not to put you to the test. However, to activate what has already been awakened. Please comprehend this. None of this happened as a result of your desire to be observed. Batan, you were unaware that others were watching you. You did not engage in any kind of performance. There was no evidence to establish your claim. When no one was present, you simply responded authentically. That was the catalyst that caused everything to change. This message was intended to arrive at this time, at this very moment in your life, when uncertainty had the potential to alter your narrative, when exhaustion could have convinced you that it was all pointless, when silence caused you to wonder if anything mattered. Yes, it did. Your pain was recognized. Your restraint was documented. Your quiet strength influenced your future. What you felt breaking you was actually shaping you. What you thought would slow you down actually accelerated you. What you thought disqualified you was actually what defined you. And something is now moving toward you. Not at high volume. No, not all at once. But purposefully. You are no longer standing in the same location. And the door that just opened has yet to reveal what lies beyond it. Our Heavenly Father, I come before you not because I am powerful, but you made me willing. In times when pain attempted to rewrite my identity. You kept me stable. When the bitterness was justified. You extended me grace. When darkness pressed against me. You awoke the light within me. I do not pretend to understand every path you have led me down. But I know. You were never gone from my life. I give up on all my wounds. Each memory, every unanswered question is in your hands. What I've been through has helped shape me. Make good use of what I've been through. Allow my life to reflect your goodness. Plant courage where fear once lived. Where doubt once whispered, truth now rises. I agree with the direction you're taking, even before I know where it leads. Guide me. Please refine me. And let what you have started in me continue with divine purpose. I agree. If something changes in you while you listen, don't let it go silent. Take a moment to share your thoughts, feelings, or stories in the comments. Your testimony could be the confirmation someone else has been praying for. As you respond, please leave 999 or 777-inch comments. Also, share your city and the location from which you are listening. Allow this to be a quiet declaration of alignment and openness to God's current work in your life. You were not brought here by accident. You arrived at the perfect time. Every amen, reflection, and word you say creates ripples in the unseen. If you haven't already, subscribe to stay connected to a growing faith community rather than just a channel. As we approach 10,000 subscribers, your presence ensures that this message continues to reach the hearts that God is awakening right now. Thank you to those who choose to support this ministry through prayers, words, or using the Super Thanks feature. Your generosity is very important, and it allows this message to spread far beyond what any of us could do alone. What if choosing grace over anger coincided with heaven's decision to change your future? I agree. Heaven has been watching you from that location, as God says to my beloved soul. This message finds you in the quiet space where your heart rests after giving everything it has. There are loud and visible loves, and then there are silent, loyal, enduring loves that are so pure that even the unseen realms take notice. Your soul remembered a love for your soulmate that the world had not given you. You didn't enjoy the act of possessing. You were particularly fond of safeguarding. You didn't like exercising control. You were fond of comprehending. You did not love in order to avoid loneliness. You were in love because your spirit recognized the presence of another spirit. This type of love is not overlooked, both on earth and in heaven. This is why the title of your journey is so important. Heaven was taken aback by how you honored yourself while loving them, rather than the depth of your affection for them. With love, you bore responsibility, my beloved soul. You remained composed while transporting it. You carefully transported it. You knew when to be silent, when to step back, when to give space, and when to simply hold the energy of love without expecting a response, even when your heart desired to speak louder. This isn't the typical kind of love. That is love that was consciously chosen. Many people appreciate situations that are straightforward, reassuring, and memorable. You chose dignity over desperation, and you loved in silence, waiting, and uncertainty. Heaven does not see love as just words or assurances. It defines love as a state of alignment, and your alignment remains intact even as your heart trembles. This is why your name echoed in places where you couldn't hear it. You were chosen not because your path was easy, but because your soul could handle depth without becoming bitter. When you were misunderstood, you did not become rigid. The fact that you were not selected right away did not make you cold. When your devotion was called into question, you avoided seeking retribution. In contrast, you chose grace. You chose emotional maturity. You chose to process your pain in silence rather than performing it to gain validation. That is uncommon, my dear soul. Heaven is unimpressed by the extent of suffering. It is moved by quiet endurance, and your endurance carries love without sacrificing self-respect, which even angels admire. You cherished your soulmate without trying to shape them to fit your expectations. You saw them as they were, with their flaws, confusion, fears, and incomplete healing, and you treated them with kindness. You did not speed up their development. You did not publicly humiliate them because of their tardiness. You didn't put any pressure on them to wake. Instead, you kept your position. Many people are unfamiliar with this type of love because of the lack of constraints. It comes with the prospect of freedom, which can be frightening for those who are still learning how to remain. However, you did not abandon your affection simply because it was not fully understood. You allowed it to exist without constraints, while also maintaining your own internal equilibrium. Heaven, my beloved soul, has witnessed your unwavering self-sufficiency in the face of profound love. You followed your intuition's advice to take a break. Despite your heart's desire to transcend them, you remained within your boundaries. You avoided situations that might have lowered your self-esteem. You chose silence over arguments You chose prayer over a reaction. You chose faith over fear. As a result, your affection became a testimony. Not all people are chosen to love in this way, as it requires strength rather than weakness. It requires an awareness of one's own identity rather than absorption in another. There were nights when you had inner conversations that you never expressed aloud. Nights when you inquired about the universe but did not demand answers. Nights when you gave up control and relied on timing instead. Heaven heard those unspoken prayers. Heaven noted your request for alignment rather than possession. You did not implore them to choose you. You requested the truth. You asked for an explanation of the intended meaning. You sought clarification, regardless of whether it meant relinquishing control. My dear soul, that request alone sets you apart from many others. Your commitment to the outcome was non-existent. You were dedicated to upholding the highest level of integrity. You cherished your soulmate without attempting to rescue them because you understood that healing cannot be coerced. You didn't become their savior. You continued to be their reflection. You displayed emotional depth, calmness, and honesty. You helped them perceive themselves by treating them with respect and without lecturing or pressuring them. That is a divine way of loving. Heaven was taken aback by the outpouring of love, which is usually reserved for the highest levels of existence. Nonetheless, you carried it in human form. You maintained a balance between emotion and sagacity. You achieved a harmonious balance of awareness and affection. You achieved a harmonious balance of optimism and realism. My dear soul, you were chosen because you understood that love does not require the loss of one's identity. You realized that love does not require the acceptance of disrespect. You realized that love does not necessitate the loss of one's tranquility. As a result, you retreated with dignity when the circumstances demanded a test of your worth. You did not experience a collapse. You refrained from pursuing. You did not cause the chaos. You were confident that the aligned path would never require your soul's abandonment. That level of confidence is extremely uncommon. That trust is sacred. That trust is what made heaven more receptive to your story. You may not be aware of it, but the way you loved shifted timelines and softened hearts. It planted seeds of awareness in previously closed areas. Your soulmate's soul recognized your love, even if they didn't fully understand it at the time. Souls consistently recognize what is genuine. Even when the mind is perplexed, your love provides a solid foundation, a standard, a quiet memory that they will treasure when they are ready to love with the same intensity. Heaven was not surprised by the allure of romance. I was taken aback by the magnitude of the obligation. Your love was free from ego. Love was not contingent on performance. You loved without considering your own well-being. My dear soul, your journey is not about expressing love. It is related to its embodiment. To experience love in its most pure form, you were never meant to beg to be chosen because you had already been chosen by the divine. Your soul is unaffected by regret, whether the path continues or evolves into something more profound. You completed your purpose for visiting this location. You were sincere in your affection. You consciously loved. You showed courage in your love. Heaven acknowledges this. This is just the beginning of your story. Because those who are chosen do not suffer the loss of love. They elevate it. And as we progress, you will understand why your heart is being trained through patience. Why heaven entrusted you with a love few can handle. and why your silence was powerful. My dear soul, there is a sacred quality to the way you continued to love in the face of uncertainty. Heaven kept a close eye on that region. You were in a situation in which many people would have sought clarification, labels, or assurance. Nevertheless, you chose comprehension over pressure. You realized that true love does not hasten the awakening of another soul. You respected the timing, even though your heart was ready for it long before the circumstances aligned. Patience was not a problem. Wisdom was derived from self-awareness. You were aware that imposing love generates resistance, whereas allowing love to flourish produces truth. Heaven noticed your ability to balance hope with reality, desire with dignity, and longing with restraint. That equilibrium is what distinguishes you as the chosen one. You were deeply moved, my dear soul, but you never allowed emotion to become disordered. When you became confused, your focus was on yourself rather than others. Instead of reacting, you engaged in introspection. You processed silently. Rather than projecting pain, this inner discipline is uncommon because most people project their wounds onto others. You handled it with great care. You refrained from using love as a bargaining chip. Additionally, silence was not used as a form of punishment. Your silence was sacred, a way of listening to both the divine and your heart. Heaven recognized that silence is a source of strength, not its absence. There were times when your heart desired to inquire, elucidate, and substantiate the feeling that was so clear within you. Another higher power compelled you to take a moment. You were confident that a genuine connection would not require endless explanations. You were confident that the intended outcome would be achieved without the use of force. That trust was not won easily. It was built on emotional maturity, self-esteem, and a deep understanding of one's own worth. You did not confuse intimacy and intensity. You understand that intimacy develops in a safe environment rather than in an urgent situation. Heaven observed how you protected the connection by refraining from overpowering it. You, my dear soul, also protected yourself. That is the reason your love was so strong. You didn't put up with emotional inconsistency just to stay connected. You did not give up your principles in order to be selected. You observed patterns. You observed the behavior. You preferred to listen to energy rather than excuses. And when something didn't feel right, you avoided attempting to fix it. That retreat did not lead to rejection. It was respect for the other soul's process as well as your own. Heaven respects those who understand the proper time to hold and release. You understood that love cannot flourish in an environment dominated by fear. As a result, you chose tranquility. You chose a presence that was grounded in reality. You chose to present yourself in an authentic manner, without any disguises. You did not play games to keep your attention. You did not withhold affection to gain control. Despite fluctuations on the other side, you remained consistent. Heaven was astounded by that consistency. Because consistent love requires emotional stability. Furthermore, emotional balance necessitates internal healing. You finished the task quietly, without the need for validation, applause, or being observed. You loved in a way that allowed the other person to be human, my dear soul. You avoided idealizing them outside of reality. You didn't place them on a pedestal that would eventually collapse. You were able to discern both the light and the shadow, but you ultimately chose compassion. You understood that confusion does not always indicate a lack of emotion. Occasionally, it refers to unresolved wounds. However, you also recognized that compassion does not imply self-neglect. That understanding represents highly developed soul wisdom. Heaven only gives such knowledge to those who are willing to use it responsibly. Some days, the distance felt more oppressive than the proximity. When the presence of unresolved energy raises questions in your mind. Nonetheless, you did not enter a downward spiral. You didn't make an assumption. You created an opportunity for the truth to be revealed. You gave me the opportunity to express my thoughts. You believed that what was genuine would last, while anything false would dissipate naturally. Most people achieve that level of emotional regulation over many lifetimes. You carried it instinctively, as if your soul had remembered it. Heaven acknowledged the recollection. You have never attempted to replace yourself in order to maintain relevance. You never toned down the intensity of your light to keep the shadows of others from intimidating you. You continue to demonstrate emotional intelligence, intuition, and stability. You refrained from seeking reassurance because you had already met your own needs. You did not plead for selection because you were already aware of your worth. Self-awareness generates a frequency to which heaven responds. A soul is self-aware and doesn't need external confirmation. That is an indication that the individual has been chosen for more advanced love lessons. No, my dear soul, you refused to allow bitterness to enter your heart, even when love appeared to be incomplete. There was no malice in your speech. You did not ruin the relationship with resentment. You chose neutrality and grace. You understood that certain connections are not meant to be forced into existence, but rather to be celebrated for the awakening they bring. You demonstrated respect for the lessons by not obsessing over the outcome. The surrender created a stir in the heavens. Surrender is not synonymous with abandonment. It is a belief in divine orchestration that goes beyond human comprehension. You cherished your soulmate in a way that encouraged growth rather than dependence. You wanted them to be intact, not attached. You wanted their recovery, not their dependence. That intention alone elevates a relationship above the level of ordinary romance. It becomes a form of spiritual labor. It transforms into spiritual alignment. Heaven accepted your love as service, not as a form of sacrifice. Love did not make you lose your identity. You improved as a result of it. This is why your path is guarded. My beloved soul, the quiet choices you made, the restraint you exercised, and the respect you demonstrated all had far-reaching consequences, even when things appeared uncertain. Your emotions did not surprise heaven. I was surprised by your emotional intelligence. I was astounded by your ability to love without losing clarity. The refusal to abandon oneself in favor of attachment was shocking. Remember this as you move forward. Your love was not unnoticed, and your story is still unfolding. However, the significance of the goods you transported is only now beginning to be understood. This is because chosen individuals do not have the opportunity to experience love, which can lead to its destruction. They experience love in order to become more aligned with their authentic selves. My dear soul, a subtle transformation occurs when love is no longer an expectation, but rather a state of consciousness that one carries. You entered that transformation without realizing when it began. It began when you stopped trying to figure out why things happened, and instead focused on the transformation of your inner world. Paisin, love has not abandoned you. It took on a new form, and you were mature enough to accept it without objection. When love undergoes a transformation, many hearts become anxious. However, yours has developed the ability to remain open without adhering. This capability alone indicates that the soul has spent many lifetimes developing the ability to love without losing its identity. You noticed that your emotions were no longer causing you to behave in an extreme way. You were able to recall information without any discomfort. It was detectable without having to submerge oneself. You could be concerned without needing to pursue. This equilibrium was not accidental, my dearest soul. It was developed through self-awareness, reflection, and restraint. You allowed yourself to mourn the uncertain without attributing it to failure. You allowed yourself to miss without turning it into an act of self-betrayal. That is not the lesson that the world teaches. That wisdom comes from within, from a soul that understands timing rather than attachment. There were times when silence replaced communication, and you learned to understand it rather than fear it. You realized that silence is not always synonymous with absence. Processing is occasionally an issue. It occasionally acts as a safeguard. It can sometimes act as a mirror, revealing things that words cannot. You refrained from making assumptions during the silence. You did not use it as a weapon of resentment. You simply observed it. That observation fortified you. You have evolved into a person who responds rather than reacts, who listens beyond the sound of a voice. My beloved soul, you have also become aware of the extent to which you value emotional security. You realized that love should cause the body to feel calm rather than anxious. It must be a sense of stability rather than one of instability. Furthermore, you stopped ignoring the signal when it repeatedly disrupted your peace. You paid tribute to it. Your boundaries were not emphasized. There was no announcement regarding your withdrawal. You simply adjusted your energy. The quiet adjustment was an act of self-respect. Self-respect is one of the most pure forms of love. You began to understand the depth of your dedication without ever keeping a score. You cherished it without considering the benefits. You arrived without assurances. However, you did not feel depleted. Instead, you felt a sense of expansion. That is how you knew your affection was genuine. Genuine love does not deplete the soul. It reveals it. Although the outcome is uncertain, genuine love imparts wisdom rather than bitterness. You have consistently opted for wisdom. Nobody else will ever know about the internal conversations you had with yourself. Conversations where you chose not to send a text. Conversations in which you refused to give an explanation. Conversations in which you chose patience over impulse. Each of these instances strengthened your internal authority. You gave up your pursuit of permission to express your emotions. You stopped questioning your intuition. You have faith in yourself. That trust served as your foundation. Yes, my dear soul, you understand that not all profound connections are meant to last in their current form indefinitely. Certain connections stimulate aspects of your personality that require independent development. This was not viewed as a loss by you. In your opinion, it represented evolution. You allowed love to teach you rather than entice you. You allowed memory to exist without turning it into yearning. You allowed the heart to stay soft without becoming attached. This is the process of emotional alchemy. You became more involved in your own life. You laughed without feeling bad. You felt at ease. You maintained your concentration without being interrupted. You stopped thinking about other people's emotions and instead focused on your own. That change restored your power, not over others, but within yourself. That is the only source of power that endures. My beloved soul, You discovered that being chosen does not imply being held. Occasionally, it entails being willing to accept what aligns with your core rather than challenging it, discern more clearly, and love more deeply. You stopped romanticizing effort that was not reciprocated on the same level. You stopped using the term potential inconsistencies. This clarity did not chill you. It promotes a sense of calm. You also observed that compassion and boundaries can coexist. It is possible to understand another person's wounds without becoming the site of their bleeding. You could provide care without having to carry. You can empathize without absorbing. That is an uncommon level of emotional maturity. Empathy is no longer equated with obligation. You realized that love must be mutual in order to last. On occasion, the memory of your deep love would surface, not to undermine your resolve, but to serve as a reminder of your own abilities. Instead of feeling uncomfortable, you smiled. You felt proud rather than remorseful. You realized that the way you loved was never cause for shame. It was a reflection of your emotional intelligence, courage, and depth. Everyone who comes into contact with you, whether they realize it or not, carries your imprint. You, my dear soul, became accustomed to the narrative's uncertain conclusion. You ceased to enforce closure. You stopped requiring certainty. You believed that once you stopped pursuing clarity, it would manifest itself. The surrender was not passive. It had a solid foundation. You continued to live life to the fullest, intentionally loving yourself and remaining true to your values. You did not postpone your life in anticipation of someone else's decision. You realized that your heart isn't brittle. It is tenacious. It can bend, but does not break. It is not collapsing, despite appearances. It adores, but it does not disappear. That realization altered how you perceived yourself. You are no longer concerned about profound love because you are confident in your ability to remain calm in the face of any consequence. My beloved soul, the way you kept this connection, the way you respected it without attachment, and the way you respected yourself without withdrawal, all contributed to your growth as a person who loves from a place of completeness. You are no longer defined by what was once uncertain. You are defined by who you became as a result of it, and that version of yourself is deeply aligned, aware, and stable. You were not killed by this love. It refined you, which is why your journey continues with grace, as hearts like yours are not designed to lose love. It is intended that they go through a transformation and come out with more clarity, strength, and a deeper connection to the truth. As you continued to progress, my dear soul, a subtle yet powerful transformation began to take place within you. You no longer carried the weight of explanation. You no longer felt compelled to justify your emotions, pace, or boundaries. You realized that people who truly understand you don't need constant clarification, whereas those who don't understand you will misunderstand even your most elaborate explanations. This realization freed up your energy because you no longer had to expend emotional currency in order to be understood. You chose to maintain your authenticity, composure, and connection to the truth. You noticed that your inner world became calmer, not empty, but more composed. Thoughts were no longer racing. Emotions no longer required immediate release. Everything began to operate in accordance with its natural rhythm. My beloved soul, this was not detachment. This was a regulation. You learned to sit alone without distractions. You learned to experience emotions without acting. That tranquility served as your refuge. That sanctuary helped to refine your perception even further. You became more aware of patterns in not only others, but also in yourself. You observed the stimuli that triggered your emotions and the factors that provided you with relief. You noticed what drained you and what rejuvenated you. You stopped ignoring discomfort in order to maintain your connection. You stopped suppressing your body's signals in order to maintain emotional equilibrium. Instead, you chose internal tranquility. That decision completely altered your relationship with love. Oh, my dear soul, you also realized that you had deep respect for the other person's humanity. You never demanded perfection. You never imagined they'd arrive completely healed. Oh, you approached them without any pressure or judgment. However, you now have a critical understanding. Meeting someone at their current level does not imply staying at that level if it impedes your personal development. You discovered that love can be compassionate without being selfless. That lesson was smoothly integrated, with no bitterness. You grew accustomed to allowing space without fear of abandonment. Space was no longer considered a form of rejection. It was a sense of clarity. It gave you the opportunity to pause, reflect, and reorient. You stopped occupying space with anxiety. You stopped interpreting distance as a lack of concern. You allowed reality to speak for itself. In doing so, you regained emotional balance. Neutrality is effective because of its ability to dispel illusions. It presents the facts as they are, rather than how you want them to be. There were times when your heart recognized how much you had matured as a result of this relationship. You did not feel inferior because you had experienced deep love. You felt a sense of expansion. You gained wisdom. You felt more stable in terms of your emotional requirements. You no longer considered intensity to be equal to depth. You no longer confuse connection and yearning. You understood that depth is a feeling of security, not anxiety. That realization quietly but firmly altered your expectations. Bien, you have also stopped romanticizing emotional pain, my dear soul. You no longer believe that love has to be painful to be significant. You no longer believe that patience entails acceptance of inconsistency. You understood that genuine patience requires self-control. The ability to walk away from situations that cause you confusion. The ability to wait for what is in alignment. This understanding provided solace. Loving starts to feel like a force that stabilizes your nervous system, not one that undermines it. You became more selective about how you used your emotional energy. It wasn't because you chose to close your heart. It was because you valued it. You discovered that availability is extremely important. You discovered that not everyone is worthy of your depth. You discovered that discernment is not synonymous with judgment. It is self-respect. Your presence became more deliberate, grounded, and composed as a result of your self-respect. My beloved soul, you have also given up the desire to demonstrate the genuineness of your affection. Validation is no longer required. You were aware of the services that you offered. You were aware of your appearance. You were aware that your intentions were pure. You felt at ease as a result of that knowledge. You stopped reliving events in your mind. You stopped wondering whether you had accomplished enough or too much. You were confident that the item would reach the intended recipient. Furthermore, it was never your responsibility to coerce anything that wasn't ready for reception. Even in silence, you became aware of the effects of your energy on others. You realized that your emotional consistency creates a sense of security, that your calm demeanor is more persuasive than words, and that your consistency has a lasting effect. It was unnecessary for you to state your worth. It had a sensation. This realization did not inflate your ego. You were humbled by this. It served as a reminder to be gentle with oneself and others. Occasionally, the idea of the connection would return in a gentle, painless way. The sensation was one of quiet acknowledgement rather than longing. Rather than sighing, you smiled. You felt gratitude rather than an ache. You understood that while certain connections are not physically present, they have a long-term impact on your development. The imprint in question did not indicate a wound. It acted as a marker of evolution. You also became less reactive to uncertainty, my dear soul. You no longer needed immediate responses. Clarity was no longer your goal. You believed that clarity would emerge once you stopped demanding it. This trust allows you to stay engaged in your life. You invested in your own development. You fostered your habits. You fortified your internal structures. Love becomes an element that enriches your life rather than defining it. You noticed that your emotional realm appeared to be larger. It is possible to hold multiple truths simultaneously. It is possible to acknowledge a connection without developing an attachment. You were capable of expressing compassion without expectation. You could remember without feeling nostalgic. This emotional spaciousness allowed you to breathe more freely. It allowed you to live your life free of the constant tug of what-ifs. You kept a sense of reality. My dear soul, you came to the realization that being chosen does not always result in union. It occasionally appears to be a method of preparation. Preparation for the reception of love that is appropriate for your current situation rather than your past. Prepare to recognize consistency when it exists. Preparation to recognize mutual effort without going overboard. You did not speed up this preparation. You put your faith in it. You continued to move forward with an open yet guarded heart.